It's updated NBA Q ratings. Whenever you're on television, you're like, man, that person gets paid a ton of money. And be like, they have a high Q rating. Something we used to have to understand at ESPN. It'd be like, what's going on with this? And be like, oh, high Q rating. So basically, it's pretty simple. It's the approval rating. So I want to try to figure out with Woz and where we're at with a bunch of different players. Everyone's favorite one right now is Anthony Davis. To fully recap where we're at with Anthony Davis, he's 29 years old. He just recently said he hadn't touched basketball in 2 months. Not what Lakers fans wanted to hear. He's played 138 out of a possible 225 games for the Lakers. We know he has the ring. We also know he has 3 years and 121 million coming his way. This is somebody, Woz, I think that was fair to suggest when he is right and at his best was flirting with being a top 5 player in this league. Mm-hmm. Saying that out loud now feels like it's absurd. I am leaning towards, I think he's getting beat up a little bit too much. Where are you with both what you think the public rating of him is and kind of where you're at?
Yeah, first I want to say immediately when you mentioned ESPN, I was like, damn, like, was Ryan confused about Josh Elliott's ascension and had to ask somebody at the job? But I don't know why that dude is the first person that came to my mind.
Yeah, that's a weird pull. Were you sort of like, it was just assumed Josh Elliott, he's supposed to be on television, so why should anybody be asking?
100%.
Yeah. There's a funny Josh Elliott story. No, funny Josh Elliott story that you'll like. First Sports Center he ever did was, I believe, the 6th with Mike Greenberg. And Greeny turned to him, lifelong broadcaster, goes, how many of these have you done? And Josh goes, first one right now. And then he just did it. And I was like, are you nervous? He goes, I'm very zen about it. He goes, I figure no matter what happens, it's over in an hour.
That's amazing.
Great philosophy. Yeah.
100%. But, AD... it's crazy because I do agree with you. He had people thinking that he was a top 5 type of guy. I know we used the two-way player thing. We kind of abused that term, but AD definitionally is that, right? Defensive player of the year type. I thought in the playoffs in 2019 in the bubble, like, he was insane. Like, it's easy to forget because I think a lot of people like to dismiss the bubble. And AD hasn't been anywhere close to that since, but he was clearly locked in and he was incredible. The problem for me, like, people could talk about the injuries. My thing is, like, when AD's played since the finals in 2020, he has not been up to that level at all. And I would say he hasn't been close. There was moments in the 2021 season where, like, he was just clearly coasting. He just clearly was just like, got my ring, got my money. I'm not really too worried about any of this. It's really early in the season. I don't really care about it. And I think that's what's disappointing to me for AD. So, like, people will say, oh, this guy's overrated and he sucks. I'm like, there's no way he goes from being an MVP level player in the playoffs 2 years ago to being a complete bum now. I don't believe that. However, I think his effort and his motor and his want to is so freaking disappointing.
Yeah, he sucked this year when he played.
Yeah.
He got hurt, came back, got hurt again. And even when he's right and he's playing, people always want a little bit more. I always think back, was it the Memphis game where he got 1 million free throws? I don't know what he was possessed with that night, but you were like, wait, why don't you play like this more often? Like, you're a beast tonight. So I also think he's always going to be just a little disappointing in that regard. Here's a weird thing, and I don't know if this will ever play out this way, but if AD were to be healthy, play well, he's 31, 32. Lakers don't have other options. LeBron is gone, and AD would carry himself this way. He has no idea how much he is drafted off of LeBron's presence as being a topic, Westbrook sucking, and, like, AD's actually probably gotten it easier. Having said all of those things, and I looked at it, I looked at the ESPN top 100 before the NBA season started. You can rip apart any list. Certainly there's a couple where I was like, what are you talking about? They had 89 before the season started. I didn't think that was wrong. That's certainly not where he's going to be this time around. But I'd ask any fan base that thinks he's done, which he's not done. Okay?
Done.
Would you be upset if your team got him in a trade in July? And I would say of course you'd probably be thrilled about it. So I think it's still lower than it should be, but I understand why it's so low. All right. Do you want to stay with it? Okay.
Yeah, look, we're watching the NBA Finals, right? And just think about all the stuff that when Rob Williams is looking right, what he's able to do out there. Like, that's AD level stuff as far as playing out in space and being able to protect the rim. And then he's a plus 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 on offense, right? Like just imagine that and think about how impactful Rob Williams has been at certain points in the finals. So, like, like, of course you wouldn't compare those players. They don't get paid the same or whatever. I'm just saying, like, in the biggest moments, the stuff that you need your best players to be able to go out and execute on both ends of the floor, AD has that within him. He just hasn't shown it in a while.
Jimmy Butler was number 16 on the top 100. Two legendary performances in that series against Boston. Almost won it with that three. He's up a notch for me, but to me, he's never top 10, always top 20, and that's okay. But whether it was the bubble run where it was like, man, we just start, the same thing with Booker last year. We start trying to push him in. It's probably happening with Tatum a little bit with this one. We just start to try to force the top guy into a tier that maybe he deserves, maybe he doesn't deserve. Whatever Butler is, I think it's always been pretty fair, but I have probably just a little extra layer of respect for him because of what I thought he did in big moments for Miami.
Yeah, he's one of the rare guys who his numbers get better in the playoffs. His numbers get better against the better competition. And so for that reason, I think he's a little underrated, and just that I think his playmaking is underrated. He's not this like tunnel vision, all I do is score type of guy. His defensive metrics, like when they track like how well players perform when Jimmy's in the vicinity, he's up there with anybody at his position. So it's like he's scoring efficiently, he's getting guys involved, making them better, and he's incredible as a wing defender, which basically is the most important defensive position outside of rim protection. So, like, I think he's closer to the top 10 than not, right? As far as it, because you don't look at the Miami Heat with Max Strus, a gimpy Kyle Lowry, Bam doing what he does, no showing every now and again. This is not some like stacked, loaded, whatever kind of team. It's Jimmy Butler being a star, like, and even borderline superstar, and getting them one game from the finals again against a Celtics team that we all accept is very well coached, very talented, if not very stupid in annoying moments all the time.
Let's talk a little Dame Lillard. 32 in July.
Yeah.
And I'm just throwing out the contract stuff to update us here. It shouldn't really factor into too much of just how you feel about the guy and maybe the investment. But 3 years, 42, 45, and 49, about 49 million. He was awful at the beginning of this year. Just to remind everybody, a career worst shooting 40% from the floor. He was 32% from threes. It was dreadful the very beginning of it. Played 29 games this year. I think it was a combination of injury and, hey, let's tank and give you a little bit of rest here after what's been a tough season for a bunch of teams, couple seasons here. Small guards don't necessarily age well. ESPN had him at number 8 on their top 100. I think Portland's so off the radar was that I don't know that people are updating what they think of Damian Lillard as much as we have with other guys that are in the playoffs. But I just feel like there's a second act with him where we're going to be reminded of how special he is at taking over games. I'm not saying he's the number one of a championship contender. I think it's very clear that's not going to happen. But I think if anything, the approval rating might be a little lower than it should be just because the whole Portland thing has been just no one cares right now. And it's not even a reflection of him. So, I'm not saying everybody's wrong about Dame like I would maybe with a different player, but I think it's just kind of what it is right now. And that's not on the top of everybody's radar.
Yeah, I would have to say I completely agree with you. I think the thing about Dame, I think you and I are similar in like the whole, rest and all of that kind of stuff. It kind of gets on my nerves just a little bit. I think it's a little overblown, the rest and the injury preservation and all of that. Dame Lillard basically had to be ripped off of the court with an injury this year. That's why he stunk up the joint. He was injured, and he had been nursing that injury since the previous season, but he's like, I don't want to miss time. So he played on it, and he wasn't his best self, and he finally missed the time, and I think he's going to get his body right. And the thing about Dame Lillard is, like, sure, there was that strange Chris Haynes, maybe I want to leave the Trailblazers thing, which he kind of retracted basically quickly thereafter. But, like, to me, he's the model superstar. Everything you want, like, as far as come back, improved every single year, works on his body, is just a straight up leader. All that intangible stuff, off court stuff, culture setter stuff, like he does all of that. And doesn't complain, and just like is an incredible hooper, like incredible scorer. I don't think people ever said this enough about the CJ thing. CJ, God bless him, made himself into a really good NBA player. The dude never passed. Like, it's Dame Lillard's job to set up everybody on that team. He had to be the alpha and the omega of the team as far as your number one scorer, your number one distributor, your leader, your everything. And he does that. And yeah, he wasn't that good this year, but like he's taken the requisite amount of time. Nobody takes their job more seriously than Dame Lillard does. So I wouldn't be surprised, like you said, if he comes back and is showing people like, no, I'm really one of these guys.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think is going to happen. And I'd always heard the entire time with Portland, like he likes it being his show. Mm-hmm. And if he went to team up with somebody else and it's not his show, he's not necessarily going to like that. But if he gets another year older, new ownership, who knows? I would think new ownership would be something he'd be thrilled about, even though he's gotten his way at this point. But I'm not. There just feels like there's a few guys that we're hitting on here where people kind of want to just write off. And Dame would never be in that group for me. DeMar DeRozan, 33 in August. He was number 45 on the top 100 list, which, looking at this season,
it's kind of
too low.
Yeah,
right. Most of us were like, we couldn't believe the contract.
Yeah,
and there's still some time left on that. Like, if Harden gets a full max, I don't know that you're going to hear a ton of people saying that's a great idea. He's going to get like 45 in the first week of the NBA season, and then somebody's going to write an article that says, I thought the 5-year max was a bad idea. And we're like, well, we still have like 4+ years to go. Let's see how it goes. Congrats on your 45 points against Memphis. So DeRozan did the weird thing where he shot at a career best from 3 at 32 years old, which doesn't happen. Still only 2 attempts. The contract to this point has been right when so many people thought that it was wrong. The Bulls as a team, I give them credit for going, we're not interesting. We have no chance at it. We can't even get in the play-in game. To let's just make ourselves better, even though if that better is flawed in comparison to the other top East teams. But there's also a swing where when he started making a million shots, it was like, hey, MVP DeRozan. And that's where you're like, do you want to say something wrong? Then go ahead and make an argument for DeRozan to be MVP this week. That's fine. He's been awesome. He's making all these game winners. The numbers were absurd, but he took this massive swing where I'd say overall, it should be higher. He deserves that, but it reached some peaks this season that I thought were absurd.
Yeah, I think DeRozan is actually a specialist, right? We usually think of specialists as like Tony Allen, defensive stopper type, or, a Kyle Korver, like this guy's a shooter type of specialist. We don't think of a guy as a specialist when his skill is like one-on-one shot creation, but that's what he specializes in. And I think that's an important trait to have. We know the defensive limitations. We know he doesn't space out to 3 enough. We get that. But I think he's a really potent weapon still. Still really underrated as a playmaker because on that Chicago team, it's not like they had a bunch of that on there. Like that was DeMar basically. His role was to get the ball moving, get the ball out. Because as much as we love Lonzo and his basketball smarts, and trust me, nobody's a bigger Carew Sanity stan than I am. Still can't believe the Lakers cheaped out and let him go. Vucevic, you name it. Like these guys, Zach LaVine, they don't play make. So DeMar's like, I'm the one-on-one shot creator in crunch time, and I'm the number one facilitator on the team. He's a very valuable player. He's way more than 45th. He ain't no damn top 10 player. He's not an MVP type of guy, but he is an all-star, clearly. And I'm somebody who's still a sucker for the team stuff, for being a consummate professional and being great in a culture in the locker room and being coachable and like never saying the wrong thing and just like leading by an example of like ultimate professionalism. So I'm higher on DeMar than I feel like even, after the disrespect coming into last season after he got that big deal.
Let's talk about the Jazz brothers. Let's go Mitchell first. 18th on the top 100 from ESPN. I have been probably more pro Mitchell in comparison to some other guys. That playoff run for him at the start of his career, like you go back and look at those numbers and stuff he was doing, I was like, man, and we're getting this here. But this last postseason was very disappointing. His lack of effort defensively, just try a little harder, man. And the Westbrook Light stuff that I don't always love with him, where it's like, I'm just going to do this on my own and kind of ignore everybody else. Mitchell's approval rating is probably the lowest it's been post, holy shit, look at this rookie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's fair, but I still, like, this is not one of those do not touch guys for me. I would still love to have him. But it took a knock this year, and I think it deserved to be knocked a little bit.
Yeah, it's tough because I'm somebody like you who was very, very, very pro Donovan Mitchell.
Wow, that's a lot.
Super high on him. So some of it is like the, tri-state area, New York City bias. The guy's a fellow Mets fan. Like, it's a lot of some of that happening. But
completely irrelevant stuff, but we love it. Yeah.
But I fall for that kind of stuff like a sucker. But, like you said, as a young guy, the kind of success that he was having in the playoffs, like there were series where his shooting from three was just off the freaking charts. Like, I'm like, all right, nobody can stay in front of this dude. And he's draining pull-up three-pointers from God knows where. I'm sorry, this is exactly what we want from a lead ball handler. But I've kind of soured on him. And it's not just the Jazz success. It's like individually just how bad he was, right? Where, Rick Brunson's kid is just cooking this guy. Like not even like, oh, there's some kind of resistance and he beat you. Like, he's just one move. I'm to the basket for a layup, or I'm getting right into Rudy's airspace and creating wide open looks for other people. They're doing this stuff without Luka Doncic. So there's that. There's this just a lack of pride on defense that I just thought was embarrassing, especially from quote unquote leader guy, which is what he 100% presents himself as and sells himself as. I'm leader guy. And so I thought that was pathetic. And then I was just really disappointed in like everybody on the team's inability to pass Rudy the ball after they got rid of Ingles. Like, they just straight up would not give him the ball at all. And I found that to be disappointing, especially when you design a defense where it's like the rest of us get to be turnstiles all regular season long and let Rudy clean up every single mess, and we will just refuse to ever let him touch the ball on the offensive end. And I'm somebody who's been some might even say a Rudy hater in the past, right? I just thought that was disappointing the way they managed that. And Donovan Mitchell, to me, was a big part of it. And, all of that being said, he's still a really incredible weapon to have. What he does off the dribble, he can shoot it. I just wish he took more pride in defense. And the lack of playmaking is disappointing at this point in his career.
Yeah, are you going to be a stats one or are you going to be a winning team one?
Exactly.
And I thought he was on the path of like being a winning team one. And this year makes me question that a little bit. Let's go to Gobert. 30 this month. This resume is incredible. 6 straight years in the playoffs to Gobert. 4 All-NBA. 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. This guy might end up in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has to guard him. And this is, I think, 6 straight years in these playoffs. I'd have to go update it again, where they were worse defensively in all 6 playoffs versus the regular season. I think 4 times dramatically so. I think he's a regular season efficiency guy that is really impressive. And if you're going to go deep in the playoffs, you need another option besides him. Because not only does he get worked in some of this the stuff that it's really hard for any big to handle, not specific to him, he does not make you pay for going small because you don't have to defend him. So I am looking at Gobert. He's 25th on the top 100 coming in. If you are a freak analytic guy that looks at just the numbers and goes, I love him, I would tell you you're wrong. And if you say he sucks, I would also say you're wrong. But I think the approval rating's taken a little bit of a ding because the defense is not carrying over now once again in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've made 180s. Not when
you used to hate him.
Yeah. I was so anti Rudy. It's just like, just the idea of watching Patrick Beverly guard you and you're 7'4", whatever you are, like that. I just can't square that. Just as anybody who's ever played basketball before, it's like that cannot stand, right? However, when you really watch what teams are doing against them, it's just that everybody else, like Utah ran an experiment, basically was like, we have one of the best defensive players the league has probably ever seen. Let's test that by surrounding him with the absolute worst defenders possible. And that's what, when you watch the Jazz, a lot of times I'll watch Rudy get switched out to somebody like Luka, who I think is probably the best offensive player in the league at this point. All around. And he gets matched up on him like he's not doing a terrible individual job. In that.
You're right. I thought in some of that Lucas stuff, he held up pretty well.
So it's not like when he's matched up against these 5-out teams, he's embarrassing himself. It's actually the opposite. It's like either Rudy's going to stay home near the basket while his teammates get just cooked at the point of attack. Like, I can't overstate this. Like, there's no resistance at the point of attack. People are at the basket within 0.1 seconds. So either I stay home and not guard these corner shooters, or I guard the corner shooter and there's a layup. Like, you can't square those two things. So like, I'm just like, look, Rudy is pretty insanely good as a 5-man, as a rim protector. I don't know that he's worth the 40 or 45 million that he makes this year. I think, and I mentioned Rob Williams again, but like, I think he's making like $18 million. Like, when you think about Rob is underpaid for what he does at his best, and Rudy's a little overpaid, but like, I don't know that he's worth all of that, but he's certainly not some terrible player. And I'm telling you, the Jazz stunk it up on defense, not because Rudy Gobert was playing center. To me, that's crazy.
Yeah, Rudy's the 1 year into a 5-year, $205 million contract extension, and it gets really ugly.
A lot of baguettes.
Right, you're paying him that kind of money. It's just not the kind of guy you can put all those resources in. Rob's at $12 million because his extension had a lot of impact because he just couldn't stay healthy all the time. So it actually turned out pretty good for them. All right, let's keep it moving. We got a couple more here. Karl-Anthony Towns, 26, third All-Star team. 2 first-round exits, which, again, it's not like they lost to teams that were inferior to them. They actually showed some fight this year against Memphis. He's got 2 third-team All-NBAs. He doesn't feel like a top 15 player. The All-NBA stuff is more positionally based.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like a turning point for Cat, so his approval rating feels higher. He was 24th in the top 100 for ESPN coming in. I think there's a weirdness thing to him, though, that maybe on the internet hurts his approval rating. So I'm always confused because I go, all right, do I actually think like he's ascending into somebody, or because the easiest thing to say was you just go like, oh, this guy's not a 1. If there's 450 players in the league, I think there's like 443 that aren't 1s.
Yeah.
And that might be being nice. All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Like everybody kind of needs their help. So if you're saying, well, Towns is a 1, I'd be like, yeah, well, I would agree with you. But I think there's a social media element to him where at the end of the season, with the way he was like waving goodbye to everybody after they lost, like people kind of ding him and he sort of invites it a little bit. So I don't know if that has more to do with his approval rating than his actual basketball play.
I'm certainly not as annoyed by the social, like how socially awkward the guy is as everybody else. Like that doesn't.
That's what it is, though, right? I mean, is it fair?
He's socially awkward. Yeah, it's weird what he's doing when it's like, bro, like have some self-awareness about yourself, and like this is the same game where you committed like some of the worst fouls. I want to say like 9 of the 10 worst fouls I saw committed in the playoffs this year were committed by Karl-Anthony Towns.
If the other one has to be the Draymond one on Luka, 94 feet away from the hoop.
Exactly.
Right,
And so it's like you can't be this obviously not very cerebral guy on the court while also being guy who blows kisses at a crowd to a team that eventually beats you. Like this is just, it's just a weird thing. I'm more critical of Towns because I'm just like, man, can you build a championship defense with this guy as your center? You know, and if what he does is most valuable on offense, it's less valuable if he's playing the 4, right? So, like, those are the two things that is hard for me to square. Like, I love, obviously, what I like when he's his ideal self on offense, like the quick-ass release on the threes at volume, with efficiency, and every now and again being able to actually be one of the few bigs who can punish a switch down low. Like, I think those combinations are like extremely valuable. I think the guy that he plays next to, Anthony Edwards, like having a center who can space all the way out there, and they can't really put a really small guy on him. Like a really small guy. Like you could probably get away with certain bigger type of wings, but like a really small guy can't guard him. You know, that opens so much up for Anthony Edwards' drive game. So like Minnesota's most important piece, Karl-Anthony Towns, is like really valuable next to him. Like he's extremely complimentary to what Edwards does. But like, is he a championship player?
It doesn't feel like it. I think the easy answer is no on that one. And that's, you know, he's really good. He's really good. He can score. He's, for a big man that can shoot and all those things. And for all the social media stuff, like, to be totally fair to him, the guy's had a really rough go of it personally for a long time. So I don't know if that plays in any of it. I just want to make sure that that's mentioned to be fair to the guy. I like him, but I think I'm never going to get that excited about it. So I think wherever his approval rating is, I think on the voting stuff, it's a little higher than it should be. But I also think that it's way more positionally based, his success on some of the resume stuff, than it is the actual player in comparison to other guys in the league. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to be saying, hey, is Karl-Anthony Towns a top 15 player in the league? I can ask the question. I don't know that I'll ever answer it yes.
I know I'll never be saying it.
Last one. Deandre Ayton, he was 35 on the top 100. He's 24 in July. I'm telling you, it's way too low. His approval rating right now is way too low. He's a center in a league that doesn't care. He doesn't always catch the basketball. It's super fucking annoying. But I think as far as bigs that have a chance of staying on the floor late in games when everybody's trying to attack your center, I still would like him. I know paying him a ton of money isn't great for this position, but at the same time, I'd rather spend $30+ million on him than a lot of other guys that are making $30+ million. I think his approval rating right now is just too low.
I tend to agree. I think we have a short memory about this stuff. In the playoffs last year, this guy was ridiculous. Like, he's 24. He didn't fall off. He's going to get better, and people do underrate it because they can't relate to it, right? They underrate the contract thing. Just the ego bruise that comes with it. The feeling that your organization doesn't respect you or value you because they didn't come out and just say, here's your extension. And I want to admit that I was wrong about that. I was one of those people that was like, what's the point, bro? Go out and do it. You'll get your money at the end of the year. Get over it. And I would say that I was wrong because his play was affected by it. 100% his play was affected by it. It seems like it's gotten to a point that he can't really come back. Like, if he wasn't happy last year, you're going to bring him back and he's going to be happy to come back, even if you pay him. I feel like the smart thing for him and his camp to do would be to go out and get a poison pill deal out there and restricted. Say, I want a 2+1. You can match it, but I'm going to have you over the barrel pretty soon here. So what's the point of that? Maybe facilitate a sign-in trade. Let's both amicably be done with each other. But like you said, all the stuff that he does, on the defensive end as an offensive threat. And the things that he doesn't do feels correctable. Like sometimes it's like, maybe don't do the fall away fake Hakeem thing and just go up and try to dunk on somebody and get fouled. Like that seems teachable. Am I crazy for that? Right?
No, I mean, there's plenty of stuff where I'll look and go, like, I know that step back shit looks really cool in the workouts. I watched Jordan Clarkson on an Instagram one the other night where I just think he threw it up over Aaron Gordon. And you're like, man, what a great shot. That almost never goes in. Like, cool post, bro. All right, real quick to finish this up, rank them in order. Who would you want to have out of Karl-Anthony Towns, Gobert, Ayton? And forget the money.
Ooh.
Just the player.
Ayton, Gobert, Towns.
Holy shit, we both picked Ayton first. We agreed on this way more than I thought we were going to.
Yeah. I like the guys that can do more things than one. You know, because like at the end of the day, like a team can figure out a way to stop your one thing. Like even with Steph, right? Like you could be like, we're going to blitz this dude. And luckily for Golden State, they got Draymond. They got guys that can figure out playmaking. But like, you know, like Steph is luckily for Golden State as well. Like he's a guy who understands playmaking. He understands defense manipulation. Like when you can do more than one thing, I like you. And Towns is like, yeah, I shoot, I score, and then.
I was checking some notes. I had some other things. They had Beal 11th on the top 100.
That's absurd. The Beal has that
his approval rating's too high for you.
Yes, and see, there are these little things that get on my nerves, like your woman going on the internet and complaining about All-Star. Like that's something that sticks with me. I'm just like.
You think it should be knocked into voting because people close to him were going after Zach Lowe.
Yeah.
That should be baked in there.
And like these little things get on my nerves when I know that they probably shouldn't. But I just look at that. I'm just like, what's going on there? Like, is Brad Beal just complaining all the time at his house about being extremely well compensated but not being an all-star? Like, is this really happening? Where's this guy's priorities? I know I'm like, get off my lawn with some of this stuff sometimes. And I even surprise myself how much I'm becoming like my father. The older that I get.
They had Jalen Green 96 before he'd even played. Now he's higher than 96. So, you know, whatever. Maybe you go. Here's another thing that I noticed. Can you name the 5 best white American players?
Okay, this is hard.
Who's the best? Is this talked about?
It's not talked about because off the top of my head,
it's so hard.
Is it Gordon Hayward?
I think Gordon Hayward had the belt there for a little while. He's just not healthy enough.
It's certainly not Kev Love.
No, but he had it for a little while because Kevin Love was always your default. Because whenever I would say to somebody, like, I'd go, hey, who's the best white American guy right now? And then you'd be like, oh, I got Kevin Love. I go, is it Tyler Hero?
Fuck. Wow. Oh, my God. Damn. Yo, it might have to be Tyler Hero. And then, you know, the problem is too, Ryan.
Dude, try getting to 5 this week and then hit me up. I'll give you a week.
Is Peyton Pritchard in the top 5? What the fuck?
Is Kevin Huerter a top 5?
Oh, Kevin Huerter is definitely top 5.
Okay, but it's Kevin Huerter. And nobody, there are very few spaces in the media that are more pro Kevin Huerter than this podcast
too.
But I mean, Kevin Huerter's one of the 5 best in this category.
Yeah. So, matter of fact, it was on the call. I was talking to Rudy yesterday, and he reminded me of an even crazier stat. He said that if Chet Holmgren goes number 1, it'll be the first white American since 1977 to be picked number 1 in the NBA draft. That is fucking crazy. That's crazy.
Maybe when Chet was asked on Instagram, like, who's the best player in the NBA, he thought they said best white player in the NBA from America. Because when he answered it, he goes, me in a couple months. And I was like, oh, man, look at the 5. Maybe the question got edited. It is It's a nice little it's a nice little trick when you're with anybody, any of your NBA buddies, and you'd be like, name your 5 best, and guys will start throwing out names. You just threw out Peyton Pritchard, and I'm like, what are you, fucking nuts? But that's no way. He's not in the 5.
No, he's not in the 5.
Saying,
he's not
I'm just saying.
He's not in the 5, but
the guy wasn't even playing in the beginning of the year. Waz is like, Peyton Pritchard?
I mean, he's in the playoffs still. You know what I mean? It's like, who was a contributor?
Oh, wait. You should have figured it out. He's one of your guys right now. He got hurt this year. Is Caruso in the top 5?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Caruso, Herter, 100% in the top 5. And those happen to be 2 of my favorite NBA players, to be honest. I think Herter's like kind of underrated, to be honest.
Right. He's kind of underrated, but he's also maybe outside the top 100 players if you go to the one. Right. So the 6th man of the year might be the best white American player.
Yeah, that's crazy. And that's why I want to see Chet Holmgren go to Oklahoma City. Because I just think matching him with that fan base, woo, Lordy. Oh, my God. Chet Holmgren in the Prairie. Oh, my goodness. It will be a tent revival at every single Oklahoma City game if that kid ends up playing over there. That would be just incredible.
You can check him out every weekend, Weekends with Waz. Appreciate it, man.
Of course. Anytime, man.